Welcome to another edition of Racing World. Still in Milan, but 1 week to go and then we're on our way home. But boy oh boy, a lot of news this week, both Formula One and INDYCAR, so I'm going to touch on both of those subjects. Many other things happening around the world, but we'll just focus on those while I've got time to do this show for you. First up, of course, you saw the magazine I bought last week. Well, guess what? I got another edition of it this week, so it's out again. Still haven't really mastered the art of reading Italian, but boy oh boy, there's some great pictures in there, that's for sure. Key headlines this week, of course, Ferrari, the 3-day test at Bahrain, halfway through it, another 3 days next week. Ferrari doing, I think, quite well. I think there's a bit of sandbagging going on. This issue of the magazine, completely full of Ferrari stuff. Obviously, Lando on the cover, but the news of the week, of course, has to be this. Lewis Hamilton, Kim Kardashian. Well. Not going to say too much on that because that's for other types of tabloid magazines. But let's just say there's plenty of news about it over here. So looking at the Bahrain Test and things to take away from it. First of all, comments from both Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso about how boring the cars are to drive. Then Lando countering that, well, if you don't like it, leave. NASCAR coming out with a cheeky text saying, come on over and join us in NASCAR. I think there's a lot of gamesmanship going on right now. The bottom line fact is, these are the rules, these are the way the cars are, and you've got to learn to adapt to them and race them. Simple as that. It's just like being on the track. Same piece of track for everyone else, learn your way to get round it. But who's on top in all of this at the moment? You'd have to think that Red Bull got a bit there. Even Toto Wolff has admitted the fact that there's something there in Red Bull that, you know, Mercedes aren't quite close to. Whether this is a game of sandbagging, who knows? This is pre-season testing. What you don't know is what fuel loads they're running, what aero they're running, what tyres. Well, we do know what tyres they're running, but there's so many combinations that until we get to Melbourne, we're not going to see a major form guide. But I think the three teams to watch at the moment, definitely Red Bull, definitely Mercedes, and definitely Ferrari. They're the three cars or three teams that I'll be watching. And then entries with Mercedes power in them, so that being namely McLaren, possibly Williams, and then possibly Alpine. The rest of them, I think they've got a few issues right now. Aston Martin's certainly got issues, not completing that many laps. And you might have Adrian Newey there, but you've got some big things that you've got to overcome in this second week of testing, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. The rest of the news, of course, centres largely around Mercedes and the whole compression ratio thing and the appeal to the FIA and what the FIA will do and all of that sort of stuff. So I think there's a bit of a journey to go on that, but if you look at it in a broader sense, is the FIA really going to knock out effectively 8 cars that have got Mercedes power in them and not have them take the starting grid in Melbourne? No, they're not. So I think that's probably going to be the conclusion to that story, and then there'll just be a lot of stirring in the background. Of course, as you can tell, me being in Milan, I had to deck myself out in Ferrari gear. It's just one of those things that you've got to do. But coming back to the magazine again, it's become my favourite picture read, you might say. But for those people in the South Pacific, you'll be pleased to know there's a great feature on the Bathurst 12 hour. It's multiple pages, great photos. So it just goes to show that the Italians are across all motorsport. It's not just pages and pages of Ferrari. There's plenty in there from rallying and then the 12 hour at Bathurst. So it's good to see. Great publication. Just wish I could understand it. But yeah, great pictures. Well, onwards now to INDYCAR and looking at things first as they happened. Mick Schumacher doing test laps at the Homestead Miami Speedway. Great track. You know, the season ended there several years ago. It was a great venue. Night race there was phenomenal. Still a fan of having more night races in the calendar. I think that there should be. But Miami's a great facility. The teams quite like it. And unfortunately, we don't go there anymore. But it was a good test facility for Schumacher and the Rahal Letterman team to really get into it. First chance that Mick's been out on an oval. You know, great to see the car turning laps. Long way to go, and of course the Phoenix Open Test coming in a week or so's time as well. So that's going to be a big teller because then he'll be in traffic. This was all by himself. The biggest comments that came out from this from Mick was the fact that he needs to learn to adjust to turning into the corner, which he'll do on an oval, and not getting off the brake pedal, or getting on the brake pedal, unlike if you were in a Formula One car or a WEC car where you're turning in and you've got brake application. You're not doing that in an IndyCar because you're on an oval. So I think there's a bit of mind adjustment, you might say there, but he seemed pretty comfortable about understanding that. The rest of the time at Homestead, they just turn laps, more consistent laps. and familiarisation of getting in and out of the pit lane in that type of car. And he said that he feels that it's quite a beast of a car to drive in a good way. He's saying it like so many people have said before him, this is a car that you can afford to manhandle around, and that's the complete opposite of what we're seeing in Formula One right now.
Yeah, it's different. I think the orientation was a bit of a difficulty at the beginning, like kind of knowing what side of the track I'm on, which corner I'm on and in at the moment. After that, you kind of get the hang of it. You know, obviously it's very new to me, so just getting acquainted with the procedures, getting acquainted with how the car feels essentially on track. I think we got a pretty good hang of it to the end now.
Then there was another test that took place that was open to the teams, an open team test. Of course, Prema not there. It looks like we're not going to see Prema to at least Long Beach, so they're going to miss the first 4 races of the season. I've got some serious doubts whether they'll even make that. Callum Ilott obviously doing a season in INSMA, and Schwartzman will be looking for opportunities that may come along. There's lots of talks of someone coming in and buying the asset, but effectively, as far as we know it, Prema doesn't exist anymore as such. And the target date from investors that are trying to rally around is targeting the Long Beach event. Whether we see it or not is another thing. They were the only people missing at the Sebring test, which happened after Mick's Homestead test. And then the big things I think that came out of Sebring was, one, Romain Grosjean turned up and he was in a Dale Coyne car, and he wasn't signed at that stage. That was a kind of quirky thing. They were saying that he was there to help evaluate the car. But then strange enough, just 2 days later, or yesterday here, it was announced that Romain Grosjean's back in IndyCar full-time, driving for the Dale Coyne team. Boy, oh boy, wasn't that a sort of worst unkept secret? But anyway, that's the full field now of regular full-time entries except Prema. But the full field is locked in now, with Grosjean taking up that last available seat. How this is all going to impact towards the 500, who knows, but more on the 500 in just a minute. Other things that came out of the Sebring test, and me being a New Zealander, it was very interesting to see. We had 4 Kiwis there because Hunter McElroy joined the occasion for Ed Carpenter Racing and turned laps. Hunter has not been in an IndyCar since Toronto the year before last, so quite a long time, and he performed very well. So much so, all 4 New Zealanders featured in the top 10 after the Sebring test, and that's pretty impressive. And I think all 4 of them on the game. Do we see a form guide out of the Sebring test? Well, we know that McElroy's not going to be there for the season, but it was great that he had the opportunity, and I think he's proven himself. So he's back on the radar. And of course, he has the LMP2 drive full season. So, you know, he's still a good investment for people. McLaughlin, Dixon, and Marcus Armstrong. Armstrong topped the timesheets, so that was a great thing to see. I think there was a fairly level playing field between Chevy and Honda, so I wouldn't read anything into that. Palau was quick early on. I'd be afraid of that. Probably the underperforming team, strange enough, was Rahal and Graham himself. He was down, way down the timesheets. But again, these are test sessions. You don't know what's going on. It's the first time people have been back in the car. I will say, going to Phoenix, we're going to see a lot more. Sure, it's an oval test, but we're going to see things that might become a little bit more trendy. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays itself out. But again, as far as Sebring was concerned, great to see 4 Kiwis in the top 10. That's probably the only thing I can really comment on that, because the rest of it I think was pretty much the same type of thing. Willpower we've talked about before, different team, Honda. Kirkwood was in amongst it. Let's just wait and see. Long way to go on that one. As I'm doing this podcast, of course, it's 100 days now to the running of the 110th Indy 500. So news around the 500. Well, here's a big one for you. Zach Brown coming out saying that he'd like to rekindle the relationship with Fernando Alonso. Alonso obviously grumpy currently with the F1 car, saying, yeah, he's open to that discussion. Will Alonso suddenly be there in 2027 in an IndyCar just for the 500, I'm saying? Because I think that there's some unfinished business there, and Zach's already starting to motivate that. Obviously, Ryan Hunter-Reay's in that 4th car this year. McLaren have been known to kind of put star entries in there with Larson, you know, recently, and Alonso a few years ago. So it'd be interesting to see Alonso return in this type of car. I think that it'd be quite different to the spec of the car that he drove last. So, and McLaren have matured a lot since then. So that would be a very interesting one. So that's one to keep the eyes on for the 500 in the future. Then the other big news, which of course we've been waiting for a long time, and it's been another on-again, off-again saga, is will Honda stay or will they go? Well, big announcement from IndyCar is the fact that they're staying, Chevy's staying, they're going through to the new generation engine in 2028, and everyone's agreed and live happily ever after, as they say. And the official statement says it is a lengthy time. Don't know how you define lengthy time. Is that a couple of years, 5 years, 10 years? Who knows? But what we do know is there is stability from the two current engine manufacturers to stay in the NTT INDYCAR series. So that's a great thing. That takes all of that stuff away from Honda. Will they be there? Do we have to gear up Ilmore to stay in the equation? It's all gone out the door now, so it's game on. And I guess the next thing is for one of those teams to win the 500 and then win a championship. And we look forward to 2028 and hopefully the new car and a new engine. So that'll be great. The other part of that puzzle that came out was that Honda are very keen to run one of the MSR cars themselves, not dissimilar to what they're doing in Innsmouth, where MSR won one of their entries fully and then kind of share the second one with HRC. And they're now talking about doing the same thing in IndyCar. Mike Shank not opposed to that idea. That certainly shows that there's a great relationship between MSR and HRC. So, if it works for everyone, why not? And I think that's Honda also strengthening its relationship within these series because they're learning how not only to develop the engine, but also how to run a team. And that's training, hundreds of people in the background. And that's a good thing for the series long term. And it's a commitment from Honda as well. Then finally, it's not that far. It's only a few weeks now to the St. Petersburg round and the season kicks off. But more interestingly is the support races at St. Petersburg are going to be entertaining. Two former IndyCar drivers running in the NASCAR truck race there, one Dario Franchitti and one James Hinchcliffe, both back in cars, and they'll be in the NASCAR race, NASCAR truck race. Never really raced in those events, so it's good to see both of them return. Big thing for Dario to be back behind the wheel. It's creating some star power around the event. So if you look at it as an event promoter, that's a great thing because you're hyping this whole thing up, and I'm a fan of that. And then Sebastian Bourdais makes a welcome return. He's in an MX-5 at this event. So again, it's kind of interesting. But again, more star power, more publicity, more name recognition of the events, more people in grandstands, more people watching on TV. It's a tick, 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 tick. And I think that's good. If this is the promotion arm having an involvement in this, then good on them. If it's just the drivers doing it, not opposed to that either. But it's great to see some of those things coming together. And it really means that the season is going to kick off in style in St. Pete. Looking at IndyCar, rather than Indy Next at this stage, but IndyCar itself, do we see a form guide after St. Pete? Sometimes you do, but you've got to remember that St. Pete is a very unforgiving back half of the circuit where we've seen incidents for the last few years either on the opening lap or within the opening lap. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see that again. Everyone kind of forgets to take their happy pill, if you like, on the opening lap, beginning of the season. And a season is not won at an opening event, but it certainly can impact your season. So the smart drivers like a Palau, hopefully a Dixon and some of the others, and I wouldn't rule out a Will Power and a Kirkwood in amongst that equation, they're going to be in the game at St. Pete. And I think that'll just springboard their seasons and we'll see a good start to the season, and that's what we need to do. So that'll be good to look forward to. As I said, less than a few weeks away now. Phoenix Test coming in a couple of weeks' time, or in a week's time. Hopefully I'll be able to report a bit on that before we leave Milan to head back to New Zealand and then really crank into the season and devote a lot to it. And of course I'll probably pick up another issue of this on my way home as well. Look at the pictures on the plane. Hope that's just filled people in for this week. It's a pretty rapid fire for you. Sorry that it's so rapid, but got the job to do here. But I wanted to keep you up to date with the latest happenings, not only in Formula One, but of course IndyCar. Thanks again for everyone that writes in. I'm really enjoying the interaction that we're having. Want to give you a lot more, lined up for a lot of driver interviews and stuff in the coming weeks as well for you. And really, let's just crank things up in 2026. So until next week or the week after, thanks so much for watching Racing World. From the land of Ferrari, I bid you farewell and we'll see you again soon.